In 2011, the World Report on Disability stated that 25 million Nigerians had at least one disability, while 3.6 million Nigerians had very significant difficulties in functioning. Another report states that the 5 most common types of disabilities in Nigeria is in descending orders: are visual impairments, hearing impairments, physical impairments, and intellectual impairments. However, American Olympians said that the only disability in life is a bad attitude. Tonight on Moments, we're going to be talking about the new face of disability. Welcome to Moments. I completely agree, with Scott Hamilton, when he says in life that the only disability that you really do have is having a bad attitude. And
I agree. Your mental state does dictate how you feel, how you live, how you view and interact with the world.
Definitely.
So,
my brother-in-law is Kabums Asuko, and he's blind. And it's interesting because having hung out with him in such close proximity, after a while, I've always forgotten that he cannot see, to the point where I'll give him a high five and he's there's no response. But that's because anybody who spent close time with him, his energy is just amazing. He has never allowed his, visual impairment to prevent him from doing anything. The only thing he always says I cannot do is I cannot drive. Aside from that, there's nothing that he cannot, and we all know he's achieved so much more than so many people who can actually see.
He is. He's a musical genius. And, just like you're saying, in my family, I have an uncle who's deaf. And I know that growing up, I would hear stories of how my grandparents would be told to leave him under the bridge. What are you going to do with this one? What can he ever amount to, But today he's married. He's got 4 children. He runs his own business. He does everything. He drives. We can all be here chatting and he'll be here because he can read lips. So he'll be, interacting and communicating. So I think, there's this kind of, sometimes there's this impression that people who have disabilities can only stand on the sidelines of society and watch but not interact. But that is, totally a myth. And today I'm happy that we're going to, bust that myth wide open.
Exactly. Joining us shortly is barrister Mrs. Chinwe Iromuanya, popularly called Chichi Iro. She's the founder of the Enabled Life organization, an NGO committed to enabling all people living with challenges of any type, especially cerebral palsy. We'll be back right after this break.
You're watching Moments Nigeria. Our topic today is the new face of disability, and we have with us barrister Mrs. Chinwe Iromuanya. She's the founder of the Enabled Life organization, an NGO which was not only born out of her passion for transforming the lives of people living with disability, but is actually run by people living with a disability. Chichi Iro is the first person living with cerebral palsy to graduate from the Nigerian Law School in Lagos. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You look fabulous, by the way.
Thank
I have to
you.
start off by
Girls
saying.
are so pretty.
Thank you so much, man. So I want to start, take it back to, growing up and when you were younger. How was that, living with, cerebral palsy? How were you treated by friends, family and people around?
Living with cerebral palsy, I was born with it. So that's the only way I knew to live. It wasn't really a problem for me. What I hated most was stepping out of my comfort zone, which was my family home, and seeing people on the streets in Nigeria just stop and say, hey, what happened to that girl? She's so pretty. Oh, what happened? And that was my biggest problem. Because each time I left my comfort zone, they reminded me of things that I was not, aware of.
Yes.
And it actually made me feel, less than everybody else. But once I got home in my house, it was normal. They gave me the opportunity to function like any one of the other children.
And do you think, your confidence is largely born from your family? Because I was saying earlier, I have an uncle and his disability is, he's hearing impaired. But, with all of us, we can do sign language and we can communicate with him really well. And growing up, people are always like, oh, he has so much confidence and why is he able to just, do all these things, run a business and just come across, with so much confidence. So would you say your family are as your main source of strength and confidence?
They have a large part to do with it, but it will be unfair to give my family all the credit because in addition to being a lawyer, I'm also a minister of God, and faith and religion has a lot to do with it. I think I came this way for a purpose. I didn't just come with the strength to do most things. I came with the boldness because you couldn't live the life that I'm living now without the boldness. So many times I say my family did a lot, but I knew where I was headed from the time I was a little girl. They could not have stopped me.
Now, for a lot of our viewers watching, they would be like, well, you seem like you speak well, you have confidence. But what does it actually mean to live with cerebral palsy? Does it prevent you from being able to do certain things?
No, not for me. Because think about it, most people living with disability don't know, especially those born with it, they don't know any difference. I always ask this question, who is making these rules about who is disabled and who is not? Disabled to do what? We are just differently enabled, For instance, if we were both to make it to the wall down there, I may get there before you, cerebral palsy or not, but I may get there with a wobbly gait, while you may get there with a model-like gait. So it's just what it is. So for me, and I guess there are different levels of disability, my type of disability, no, it hasn't really prevented me from doing anything. What I just want is people to just let me do what I can my way. That's what the problem is.
Fantastic, fantastic. And you're living an amazing life. You're married, you have children. Can you talk to us a bit about your family life?
I met my husband in law school, and he's an amazing guy. I wonder what made a Nigerian man, able-bodied like we call them actually, at the age of 20, decide to date somebody like me. These days, the older I get, the more I appreciate what it was he did. Especially as I watch other people with disability in Nigeria go through those struggles. The stigma is enormous. 50 years down the road, nothing has changed. And I wonder what gave this young man the confidence to pick this woman, to be his wife. We've been married, we have been friends for 29 years now, and we've been married for 24. It's been the life of my dreams. We have four men. We have 4 children that are men. Their ages range from 23 to 17, and it's just amazing.
I mean, in so many ways, you're talking to us and you say, you got married, you have 4 boys, and you're dispelling so many notions that I think a lot of people at home would have about someone who has a disability. Like, how is it possible that, you're able to bear 4 children? How is it possible that you were able to take care of 4 children? So I wanted to talk a little bit about the day-to-day life, specifically when you first did have your children, so that we can understand what it's like to walk in your shoes. And we'll talk about that after this break. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to Moments in Nigeria. Today on the show, we're talking about the new face of disability. And our guest today is a disability advocate, Mrs. Chinwe Iromuanya. And she has an NGO that advocates for people with disabilities, but she also is living with a disability, cerebral palsy. So before the break, I wanted to, hear from you about the experiences of having a disability and going through childbearing and also raising your 4 boys. What was that like for you?
When I first got married, I didn't know what to expect. I kept thinking, is he crazy? How, because I worried more for him. I would have been okay on my own, but he was serious about what he wanted. So, and one thing led to the other. When I was pregnant, I was very anxious because I had never done this. I had never seen anybody like me do the things I wanted to do. Most people with disability at that time were kept behind closed doors. So I had no role models. I was the only person that looked like me. So I kept wondering, I've always had this dream to get married and have kids and have children. So I wondered if I could do it. But I got pregnant and it developed and everything. My family were like, you know what? You're just going to do elective CS. There's no need. Don't bother being superwoman and all. So I met with my doctor and she did her regular, the usual checks. And she said, I see no reason why you shouldn't have this baby on your own. But I was still scared. I asked my husband what he thought and he said, I think you can do it. I said, okay, I will tap into your strength. So, but we scheduled for a CS at the end of the pregnancy. I prayed about it and asked God, if it's your will that I'll have this child on my own, let it just, let the child just come out before the date. So on my 39th week, I had gone into the hospital, 38th week, I had gone into the hospital to pick up some prenatal supplements from my doctor. And she said, I have to check you. And when she checked me, she screamed. I was already fully advanced into labor.
Wow.
I normally have what you call precipitated labor, which is 15 minutes of labor, and that's for all 4 sons.
Really?
Yes.
So your labor is 15 minutes?
15 minutes for all 4.
Wow.
Yes.
Amazing. Wow, what a story. So, let's move on to your NGO right now, the Enabled Life organization. So, it's run by people who have an array of disabilities. So, what is that like, having everyone work together? Can you describe kind of the experience and the work environment as well?
Apart from coordination issues, because most, I'll say this, a lot of people are disabled, but most of them are not disabled on the outside. I see a lot of people walking around in Nigeria that are grossly disabled, but mentally and psychologically, emotionally, more than the people that have, disfigured hands or legs. So apart from coordination issues, and we know how to get out of the way for each person because each person's needs are different. When it comes to, doing the work, being intelligent, they are one of the most intelligent people I've met, and they run the organization fully without hitches.
That's amazing. Fantastic. And what kind of services do you offer? Because I know that you just recently launched the NGO.
Yes.
So what are your goals? What are you hoping to achieve from the NGO?
One reason that I launched the NGO was I found out that Nigerians had not really understood people with disability. And I don't blame them. What you don't understand, you cannot deal with.
Yes.
What you don't understand, you fear. So when people see you the first time, they don't know how to relate to you. They don't know how much help you need and everything. So I want people with disability to be more visible. I want people with disability to be seen to do normal things. Because like I said earlier, I didn't understand why 50 years down the road, there were still not so many people with disability are being visible. They are afraid of being doubly stigmatized, like I call it. Because if you don't have the kind of life that I have, you don't want the public glare because it's like you're flogging the same thing that the next person who used to discriminate against you. So I wanted to be on the forefront to say it's okay to come out and play and to let other people in the society know we are just normal people, we have so much to offer, and you can gain a lot by interacting with us.
Definitely. And I'm just interested to know, what advice would you give the parent of a child with a disability who maybe doesn't know how to maybe socialize the child and take the child around other kids for fear that they may be bullied or stigmatized? What advice would you give so they can nurture the child to grow up healthy, confident and strong?
Protection sometimes is harmful. The people that destroy us the most are family members that want to shield us from the hurt. You have to let that child go out, face that discrimination, and figure out how to survive with it. I have a new book out, and the first chapter of my book talks about my mom. I couldn't believe the day my mom took me to boarding school at the age of 11. Wow. I had never been out of my family home. She drove me there, and she turned around and left.
Wow.
I thought she was the most wicked woman on earth. Years down the road, I realized that was the best decision she made for me. So those things are things that mothers have to learn to, just loosen the grip and let the child, there will be issues, but the child will get over them.
Now, in terms of, the types of discrimination and stories that you've heard from, friends who have disabilities or the types you face, can you just share a little bit with us on how you are able to overcome that?
You have to be willing to try, and you have to learn to laugh at yourself. I laugh at myself all the time. if you follow me on Facebook or you read one of my books, it's all about my stories. It's all about the awkwardness of cerebral palsy and how, you do things differently from other people. I will share one of my funniest stories with you. It was about going to a party in those days, and the men sat on one side and the women sat on the other side. Of course, I had the prettiest face in the room, so I had gone to a party that I didn't know any of the people. And the most handsome guy got up as soon as the music started playing, and he advanced to the female section, and guess who he was coming for? The prettiest face. And I was like, oh no, oh no. Not that I couldn't dance. Of course I dance very well. But I didn't want to be the first person on the dance floor in a strange place.
Okay.
So as he approached me and he asked me if he could have a dance with me, I was like, okay, sure. I got up. By the time I took the first 2 steps, the guy realized something was wrong. He just turned and he said, oh, I'm sorry, should I get you back to your seat? And I'm like, no, if I couldn't dance, I wouldn't get up. Will you want to try? And he said, sure. I guess he was such a gentleman.
That's very nice.
He didn't know what to expect. We got on the dance floor and I did an incredible job. So I always ask people with disability, what do you think would have happened to me that day if I let him take me back to my seat? I would have, that would have set the stage for my future. I would always approach new things with that fear. You have to be willing to try. What is it that can go wrong anyway?
Oh,
That's
such
an amazing spirit.
inspirational words.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ma. Thank you so much. It's now time for a short break, after which we'll be joined by our second guest, Dr. Jubril Dosunmu, who is the Medical Coordinator of Advanced Medical Systems and the Medical Director of the Southern Shore Hospital. He'll be joining us after the break. Welcome back to Moments Nigeria. Today we're discussing the new face of disability, and our second guest is Dr. Jubril Dosunmu, who is the Medical Coordinator of the Advanced Medical Systems and the Medical Director of the Southern Shore Hospital. He is a general practitioner who was trained at the Lugansk State Medical University in Ukraine. Doctor, welcome. So nice to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
So first off, I want to ask you, I think I already know the answer to this question. Are there enough, provisions and enough services for people living with disabilities here in Nigeria? And if not, why not? And how can we address this to ensure that, that we do better?
All right. First of all, I'm going to answer this question from the medical field, on the medical line. Ideally, you're supposed to have a doctor to about 100 people. That's the medical index for healthcare. And in Nigeria, we have about 50,000 doctors, if I'm being positive about that. And we have about the population of 180 million people.
Wow. So just in terms of general healthcare, we
general
don't have
healthcare,
enough
we have a huge
doctors.
problem. So we have a problem with the healthcare system. And we have an even bigger problem with the provision of services to the disabled people. And it's getting worse by the day, basically, because you find out that a lot of Nigerian doctors are frustrated with the system, and they're actually finding opportunities outside the country. So they tend to leave.
Wow.
So it sounds as if there's a challenge both on the side of, the medical practitioner and also on the side of the fact that, we as people, we don't have enough doctors. But I guess my question is, how can this actually improve? Even if we cannot get enough doctors, what kind of systems can be put in place to where people feel like if I have a child who has a disability, I have access to proper medical healthcare systems that can provide for, physical therapy, counseling, whatever services need to be put in place to make sure that my child and also the whole family is living well?
Yeah, I think in that case, I think the government needs to come in, because sometimes we have the human capacity, and we have those professionals that actually studied to become counselors, child therapists, behavioral therapists, and all these things, and you find them doing other jobs. It's because there is no, the environment is not conducive for them. So now, if you were to be a child therapist and you opened an office space and you're seeing probably 2 people in a week, you probably will not be able to make profit or make a living from that. So a lot of them, they tend to forget about their profession and go into other professions. So I think that the problem is that if, for example, Lagos State government, they had a kind of a database of these people and allocated patients to them, and then our clients, because we don't look at disabled people as patients, allocated clients to them, and then they get the numbers they need to make on a weekly or on a monthly basis.
Okay.
They'll be encouraged to continue in that path. So the truth is that we have sociologists, we have psychologists, we have a lot of these professions here in Nigeria, but the system is not encouraging for them to actually practice.
So, in terms of lobbying the government, what can be done? Because I'm thinking of, Western societies, the US and the UK, they have, certain centers, provided, paid for by the government with special grants, where people with all sorts of disabilities can go. I have a niece and she is deaf. And she actually, had to move abroad because in Nigeria, her family couldn't, she was very shy and withdrawn, and other parents wouldn't really want their kids to play with her, and she just wasn't developing at the pace at which she should have been. And years later, having lived in the UK, she's the most confident young person that you could ever meet. So how can we raise standards here in Nigeria so we can actually have those facilities available to us at home?
The problem, it can be divided into bits, but there is a single present problem, which is the fact that government on its own cannot fund healthcare.
Okay.
It has to be privatized.
Okay.
It can be subsidized by taxpayers' money, but you can't fund healthcare.
Okay.
And that's the mistake that people keep making. That's why we have a shortage of these services, because the government is thinking that I'm paying for this, I'm paying for that. Why should I pay for that also?
It's almost as though they're trying to meet the basic needs, and they don't understand that there's an importance in making sure that you're meeting the needs of people who are living with disabilities. Now, when you were younger and your family had to seek medical care and medical services for you, what was the experience like in dealing with the healthcare system?
First, I was born during the Nigerian Civil War.
Yeah.
So my parents couldn't take me out of our immediate environment immediately, and they couldn't tell what was wrong with me because I looked like I was a perfect child till I started taking those few steps. So the first place they took me were the local bone menders, because that was what was available to them at that time. Yeah, they did some things that I write in my book that I don't know if they helped or not, but for the fact that I'm walking today, I think everything that happened in the process to getting me here helped. So the local bone menders, sometimes they dug a hole, put my leg in there to straighten it. Whatever they had to do, they did. Then after the wash, my mom was able to travel, to Lagos. We lived in the East, to bring me to the orthopedic hospital. So there are so many constraints. But if I may add to what he's saying, I agree with him. Government cannot do everything, but government can give incentives to the private sector to motivate them to do more. Okay. You could say, if you do this, we will give you that. Just like they are giving incentives in the area of agriculture right now. But the issue here is this. From the top to the bottom, we don't see people with disability as human beings that are worth investing in. Yeah. And every day, the able are getting disabled. I don't care if you were born with it or not. If you had a stroke or if you had a car accident, you're going to be in the same position. But we have this way of not bothering to waste our resources on people that are not perfect. And who is perfect in Nigeria? I don't know.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And, I'm so happy and we're thankful that you were able to come on the show and to express and share your story, and also for the Enabled Life organization. So can you just give us your details and information in case anybody at home is watching and they would like to get in contact with you?
Yes. You can follow me on my writing on Facebook. I go by Chinwe Iromuanya on Facebook. And you can visit our website. It's called theenabledlife.org. Okay. And you can read, interesting blog, upcoming things. And you will see us. We'll be around. We will give Nigeria a run for its money. We're here to stay.
That's wonderful.
Fantastic,
thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much, Dr. Dosunmu, for coming on the show. We appreciate it. All right, coming up shortly, it will be time for In a Nutshell.
Welcome back to Moments Nigeria. Our topic today is the new face of disability, and in a nutshell, what I've learned from this episode is that everybody deserves, you know, a fair chance at having the best life possible. You know, whether you're disabled or you're not disabled, you know, you just need, disabled people need to have the right services, but also what our guest, Mrs. Iro, said is so powerful to me about having the right mindset. You know, when she gave the instance of when she was asked to dance and she could have just sat down and let fear take her over, but she actually overcame it. And, you know, that's how she's lived her life, and that's how she is where she is today, a successful woman with a lovely family, 4 beautiful, you know, children. It's just, she's an inspiration to me, and I think, you know, I hope other people who are living with any kind of disability can look at her and say, wow, this is someone who has a full life, not for a disabled person, or for any, you know, able-bodied. This is someone who, you know, we would all aspire to be like. So
I mean, she's a motivational speaker, you know, she's a mom, she's a lawyer, you know, she has an NGO. She just has not let anything hold her back, and I'm just so encouraged and inspired by her story. So huge thank you to Chichi Iro for coming and sharing her story. And she also has a book called Healing Through My Stories, which she mentioned is available on her website if you're interested in getting a copy. And the book just shares her life experiences and her, you know, journey of living with cerebral palsy, but also flourishing despite the fact that she has a disability. So thank you again so much for joining us on another amazing episode of Moments Nigeria. We hope that you were inspired, and we really do hope that this episode inspires and reminds us that we should treat people who are living with disability as part of our society. They are not less than, but they have rights, and they should have access to good medical health care, to education, and also rights to just flourish in life. So thank you again for joining us. Always remember,
if you can think it, you can do it.